All right. Well, thanks for coming back. I hope you guys enjoyed lunch. This is sort of a special thing we like to do with every festival. As much as we like to give you interesting speakers and start conversations, we're also really interested in grounding all of the estuary stuff in-person communities. So we like to give space for members of estuary communities to give a little bit of feedback and some personal experience with estuary and establishing them. So today we've got some people from the local German estuary here in Mannheim. Is that where? Yeah. And so to start, I'm going to have them give a brief introduction of who they are and sort of how they found estuary. And if we can try to make that, 2 minutes or so. I know it's a difficult question, but that'll help to give time for the rest of the questions.
Shall we go from left to right?
Sure.
Our left or their left? Okay, cool. How I got to estuary? There was
And your name and
my name. Oh
yes.
Yeah. Not everyone. Okay, not everyone knows me, especially in the camera. My name is Hannes. Good. Now that we've done that, in the Discord, someone mentioned the Reiki's 4 Ps, which are Peterson, Paul, Peugeot, and power. And I didn't know power. So then I researched what could be meant with this power thing, because if you Google power, you won't find burn. But then I stumbled across burn and I watched burn and it was very interesting. And then he mentioned something about the thing in Germany and I was, the what now? And then I found out about Landau last year. That was 2 months or so before the actual event. I quickly joined the estuary and got to know you guys before going to Landau, and well, now I'm here.
Great.
I don't know how to continue after that. Well, I'm Stefan. I'm 40 years old. I initially got onto the Discord server through Paul Vanderklay by clicking on a link under one of his videos. But apart from that, I don't actually have the same route as most of you have with Jordan Peterson and that kind of stuff. I did not have a deconstruction or reconstruction phase. I've always been a Christian. And what I actually have, I wanted to find out more about my own heritage, so I started watching videos about patristics and church fathers and the Great Schism and Reformation, that kind of stuff. And this Ryan Green from Gordon Conwell Seminary, he has a magnificent series about that. So I took that, and then he referred to one video by Bishop Barron, and I didn't know who Bishop Barron was, so I watched Bishop Barron, and then Bishop Barron is talking about this obscure Canadian psychologist, and I thought, well, that's interesting. So I listened to a bit of Jordan Peterson, and then I started looking into all that stuff about Nietzsche and Jung and watched Uberbojo. But very soon, my upbringing, kicked in and my internal heresy alarm kicked off. And it was like, no. So I was looking for some commenter that was more in my tradition talking about Jordan Peterson. And there I found Paul Vanderklay, so that was very interesting. And with the Discord server, I just clicked, and the evening I clicked on it, I said, hi, I'm here, and someone said, you need to go to the German language chat. So I went there, and there was this guy named Matthias, and he said, where do you live? And I said, I live in Neustadt, which is like 15, 20 minutes from where he lives. And that was like, that's an interesting coincidence. And very soon afterwards, we actually went on to a hiking tour in my hometown, which was where Job, also from the Netherlands, drove to us, and we had a wonderful day there with estuary and going to Catholic Mass, getting in trouble for that. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. And since then, I've been participating in the online and partly in the offline discourse here.
Yeah, who am I and how did I get interested in the estuary? I'm Matthias, I'm 40 years old. I'm a husband, I'm a father of 2 girls. And basically, I also discovered John Peterson in 2017. And the coincidences you talked about, I also had a lot of them. And, I was on my own at the beginning of this journey. And at some point I met this guy in a bus, and we commuted to work, and we met each other from time to time. And I was listening to Peterson at the time, and I thought, I have nobody to talk about. And wait a minute, I know him from years ago, and he's American, he's Christian, he's interested in culture. Maybe he knows something of it. And I texted him afterwards and said, "Hey, Dave, do you know maybe John Peterson?" He said, I'm just listening to him right now. And so the two of us, we kind of started kind of a two-person estuary. Like, this was before COVID, right? And then we found Paul Vanderklay, the Discord. We kind of built a German channel there and German online conversations. And then at that time also John Van Dunk came around with the Estuary Protocol, and the two of us, we participated for almost a year in the online thing that John Van Dunk is doing. So he taught us the Estuary Protocol, basically. And then we started a in-person estuary here in Mannheim, which is running now how long?
2 years? Maybe, yeah.
Okay, that's how I got to estuary.
I didn't know if you were giving me the mic or... Yeah, my name's Dave. I'm 32. I'm not 32. I'm 45. I have 3 kids. And married. And yeah, we've been doing estuary now for at least 2 years, I would say. Maybe 3. And yeah, before COVID, I went down this deep rabbit hole listening to Jordan Peterson. And I met Matthias in the bus, like he said, and we had a good conversation. It was like 5 minutes talking about your family. And I think that was like the second time we had randomly ran into each other in the bus. And we knew each other from earlier. And so then we exchanged numbers that time. And then, I don't know, a couple hours later, he just writes, "Do you know Jordan Peterson?" And I was listening to him right then as he asked. I was like, because I had been in this complete rabbit hole and had not talked to anybody about it for even my wife. I was like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I should. And so then, yeah, we started meeting up. We met at a cafe, and before there was estuary or anything like that. And then, of course, COVID came. But that was time then to learn it online, and we participated in that. And it became very clear that this area, there was just a number of people that within this region, it's called the Rhine-Neckar, which is the Rhine River and the Neckar River, there was a handful, dozen people and we just started meeting. And so that it just all came together in that way. Just randomly that we're all kind of, I don't know what's about this area. Maybe the estuary, 2 rivers, I don't know. There's something there.
So we have all been doing estuary in different times, different places, different ways to get there. But what has the impact been of participating in this space for you guys personally?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we need time for answering that one. Maybe I just start off. I had a sort of homelessness that was not related to not having a spiritual home in that sense, but not having an intellectual space where I could play out the ideas and concepts that I had in my head. So I was that kind of weirdo that read books that no one knew about. And that wasn't just Jordan Peterson, but it begins already with with C.S. Lewis stuff and maybe N.T. Wright. But that stuff like that is so at the fringe of most people that I know, that I was looking for a community where I could talk about those things and get some feedback on that and some pushback on that. And I found that lacking, and it still is lacking in the German language space. So that's one big issue that I have, is we're still in this Anglosphere right now and everything is taking place in English. But how do I transport that to my community? I have to translate that into German, and that's already very difficult because I find myself that in this corner, I think differently because I think in English. If I were to try to explain what I think and consume to my wife in German, it already breaks down. It's really, really hard to transport those ideas and principles to another language. But what I found really helpful was I found that there are so many stories with so many people that have this kind of wave history of ups and downs, catastrophes and highs, and there seems to be kind of, for me, some pattern that I can recognize and see, okay, that is what it means to be human. And to be able to relate to everyone here in the German Discord, but also on the English Discord, to see, now, what I feel, what I think, what I experience, that's nothing new under the sun, but still it's very individual. And you find this resonant space where everyone can talk about that and feel safe, although it's not a safe space. And we talked about that yesterday. It's like, okay, it facilitates something that can be very aggressive, and you can get hurt, but there's always space for this redemption and repentance and forgiveness in there. So in a sense, the estuary for me is a very Christian corner, even though not everyone on it is Christian. But I find the stance, the way that people behave in general, is so outstanding that I want to participate in that and have a share of it, and maybe transport that into my normal meet space life, because I don't find it in a way that I did in this little corner.
I think it was about a year ago. Yeah, it was about a year ago. No, it was this year. A bunch of us participated in like a fasting program. It's called Exodus, that was run here in a local diocese in Speyer. So it's a very famous church, and there was about 30 people that participated in that. And some of them were from the estuary, a few, and some were just local. It was all a men's group. And we met up for one day in Speyer to meet with the other participants. They were eager to learn about estuary. And I remember that was a very crystallizing moment for me, because I realized what I was taking part in on that day. Everybody was invited to go around and share what the estuary meant to them and why they did it. And we talked about Peterson and other figures in part of the conversation. And I just listened to people's stories, right, as they talked to these other people that had no idea what this was all about. And I realized how much change was going on in people's lives, and like this journey people were on. And I realized I'm part of this too. I mean, I'm searching for things, and I have found other people that I'm journeying with. And that was it just crystallized in my mind, because we were talking to strangers about this really strange thing we do and realizing I was like, yeah, this is the culture I want to be part of. And that was what's the impact on me. I get to partake in this, and it's a space that I find in very other few aspects of my life.
Yeah, I can second that. So for me, the impact for my personal life is that you're not alone in this anymore, that you're together on the path, you're kind of in a fellowship. And yeah, because the important thing is also the repetition, right? It's not only one session, but you're doing it over time and together. And yeah, that can have massive effects on your personal life. Yeah, definitely.
No, I
Honestly,
have to say something. Okay.
you don't have to, but
Okay.
if I want to give you the space if
Yeah.
you'd like to.
Thank. I very much enjoy okay. I'm not sure I understood it correctly, but in Campbell's hero's journey, there are a lot of, usually it's a circle, because the hero returns to the village, but that's actually not the story, because at every point in the circle, the hero can just die. Because you can be eaten by the dragon, and you can not listen to the call and just stay at home. And one interesting story I found was there was an Irish one, where the hero slew the dragon and had the treasure and went home, but he was sort of stuck in. I think the village was 100 years older now or something, and he wasn't able to talk to them anymore. He didn't speak the same language, and he didn't have the. So he couldn't give the treasure that he found. He did this whole journey, the whole sacrifice, and he brought the treasure, and he wasn't able to share it with the village because they weren't able to connect anymore. He went through this whole thing. And for me, it was the same thing with Dave, when you've seen the 200 hours of Peterson's seminars and you listen to all of the Vervaeke lectures, and then you have a lot of new words and a lot of new concepts and a lot of old concepts. And then you take Peugeot into the mix and get the symbolism started, and then okay, you can't talk to anyone anymore. How? I find that really hard, and this group helps with that because I try to. There are so many wisdoms in that in the old things that we can still learn and still reuse, but hardly anyone does have a language for that to comprehend that. And some things are just words, but some things are concepts. So relevance realization it's a brilliant concept, but you'd have to have a 15 minutes discussion or no monologue with someone to get give him the short version to actually get to the thought that you wanted to convey there. That's yeah. And well, in this space we have a very similar language because we have a lot of very similar concepts that we've grasped from this little corner, and we can also help each other to come back to the ground, to get back to earth with that, and return from the high level, clean your room. Well, yes, but when? You know, the day only has 24 hours. But to get it really into life again, and to how do I get from the situations at work or at home and all the problems with that, how do I actually apply all that stuff, and how can I live that of which I've had a vision, how good it could be.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, we've obviously had some success with Estuary in the online spaces, but it seems like throughout the world, we're struggling to figure out how to take that and bring it into in-person community. But your Estuary seems to be one that has been very successful at grounding it in real life in local communities. How did you guys lay the groundwork to start these in-person meetings?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, as Dave said, we are into this now 2 or 3 years, something about that. And when we, I mean, as I already said, we participated in the Discord before we did the bi-weekly calls with John Van Dunk, where we got into the process, into the protocol. So,
And that was with Elsnet.
Yeah, exactly. That was with Elfnet, and John Van Dunk also offers this. If anybody is interested, he offers this still. If you want to learn about it, he offers this, and we are also planning to offer a bi-weekly Zoom call where you can like dive into the experience on a regular level and really get into it. But after that, after the online participation, we thought, okay, we need to start this here in Mannheim, and how do we do it, and where do we do it especially? And then we discussed, okay, do we do it at church? Do we do it in a restaurant? Where do we do it? And that could be an important question for newcomers, because some people are still reactive towards church and wouldn't go into a church. And how did we start it? We started in a restaurant, right, Dave?
Yeah, we met in some restaurants, and that was worked really well. But it could be a radically different experience. Sometimes it would work well, and then sometimes it just was almost impossible. I think some of you guys last night were out to eat, and if you can't hear more than one person talk across the table, it just didn't work at all. So we moved into a basement of a church, and that's worked out really well for us. We have nice quilts hanging around, and so we make tea. But we decided that we need this space where you could actually talk. So that all depends on what venue you find or what kind of restaurant. But meeting, it has give and take, because if you meet in a public space, it's much more easy to bring people. If you meet in some kind, where you have to open a door with a lock, with a key, that's just a different feeling already. So we're, I think, still trying to figure out if that's the best place. Works for now. Maybe we'll meet at the villa. That's what I would like to, but we'll see. Yeah.
And how did you grow your membership? Did you leverage online spaces? Did you try to connect with local communities? How did you grow that base member of recurring people coming to these meetings?
Yeah, I mean, one thing was we advertised our meetings obviously on the Discord server. We opened a meetup page where from time to time some people come, but not so many over that channel. And of course, we from time to time we invite people where we think, okay, maybe this person is interested, and we tell them about our group. And sometimes people show up. And one other important thing was, you mentioned that, Stefan, before, like doing special events together, like doing a hiking day or doing an Advent campfire singing together. That, yeah, different formats to form this community. That was also very helpful. And of course, like the festival last year, that was a massive help to get more people in. Hannes, you said you came to us because of the festival, and that was true for a lot of people. So really having these different activities besides the monthly or weekly or bi-weekly meetup, the estuary meetup, helps to get in new people.
Yeah, the thing with the log, if you were to just, hey, we're 8 people and we're meeting in the basement of a church, come join us. They'll be Kool-Aid. Maybe that's not the most inviting kind of thing. The festival is more open and more open space. Now, Tobias's wife, for example, wanted to see what this is all about, because this is a very weird thing. How do you explain this to anyone? But she's working in the kitchen now because she said, "Hey, I can be there without actually having to participate." that's a good thing. So this is a good place for that, actually. So yeah, different forms.
Well, and obviously these sort of events, they've helped you gain potential members, but has it helped you gain deeper roots within the community? Like the people that are already there, have you seen that have any positive effects on relationships?
Well, first of all, we have to applaud Matthias for being the main facilitator of all of this.
Yes.
Without him, there wouldn't have been the conferences, the estuary meetings, and all that kind of stuff. Not just for this weekend, but in total. Without Matthias, there wouldn't be a German estuary. So it definitely needs the one who takes up the task to actually organize those things and, pull those strings together and say, I have this idea. How about we do it? And he's the one that has been doing it for the last 2 or 3 years. And he was also the one that kicked us into our butts and said, there's this Exodus 90 program. Now you're all on a journey. Why not do that part of the journey together? And it was like, wow, like 8 people from our group participate for 3 months in fasting and praying and going to Catholic Mass and all that kind of stuff. That's an intense experience. So yeah, it took Matthias, but it also took the right kind of setting and opportunity to do something together. And it definitely is not just the thinky-talky. So singing together, hiking together, having lunch together, those things that make up a relationship, those really create this kind of community that we want to be in. And on top of that comes then the discussion about Jordan Peterson and all those people. That's a really important add-on. It began with it, but to actually have it be sustainable, it cannot stay at that level. Then it becomes completely, dogmatic and intellectual, and that won't help.
When was the last time that we actually talked about Peterson? I'm not really sure.
In the German, yeah, I don't recall.
I think what he did was collect people, or set the value framework for this, because we've had the discussion, because we're sort of a Christian group here. We're not. It's lovely to have great atheists and to hear about Nietzsche. That's brilliant. And no, that's really important. But there is the movement, okay, all the people become Catholic and Orthodox and go get baptized. That's sort of the path that is walked on here. Where was I going with that? What was the question?
Well, you said when was the last time we talked about Peterson?
Yeah. Because what Peterson gave us was the core values of inquiry and honest conversation and thinking about the stuff and so on. And that's the value set, because no one in our group is against that, is against the dialogos, and we don't have any activists who try to, I have my agenda and this is the truth that we all have to conform to. No one thinks like that, and we're all seekers in a way.
So,
Can I
Yeah.
add something? Like, yeah, I mean, it's true. You need the commitment to start these things, but also I think this community is just a very good environment to start these things, and you get a lot of help if you start something. Like, oftentimes I didn't have to do so much. I just have to do, okay, every 2 weeks we meet at that time, and then a lot of people show up. Or I make this flyer for the festival in Landau, and somebody says I make the website. Cassidy says I make the finances, and everybody shows up. And yes, you need some very committed people, but you get also a lot of help. So if you start something, you can do it in this community, I think.
So, what would you guys say the biggest differences are between the online participation with Estuary and the in-person? Because you guys have definitely done more of the hybrid model, where you have, the German conversations online, but then you pair that with the meetups in person. So, what are those differences?
I found a huge difference to be the fact that I see and I have a bodily representation, I have a bodily experience of that person in front of me. And that does make a difference when it comes to questions of trust. And that trust, you can't just say, I trust you online, and the other side says, yeah, right, of course I trust you. No. But when we're together and we have this kind of conversation, we realize, okay, how is everyone behaving non-verbally as well? So do I see some tension there or not? Is there some laughter associated with it? Just because I see a lol smiley doesn't mean that anyone is laughing, right? And those are the real important differences when getting into those nitty-gritty discussions we have. And the other thing is conflict resolution. I find that even if we sit together and there are some debates or discussions taking place, there's a different mode of approaching conflict resolution than in just the online chat. Because there things can derail very quickly, and everyone afterwards says, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. If I had seen that person and he would not have screamed but said it very politely, I would have not taken it as, an insult in the first place. So a lot of these interbeing aspects get lost in the virtual sphere. Now, that does not invalidate the necessity to have those online spaces. And I mostly participate in those online spaces, to be honest, because it fits into my daily schedule the best. It's easier to me to chat a bit in online discourse at like 11 p.m. in the night when everyone's sleeping and I'm just before going to bed, than taking an hour's drive to somewhere and then spending 3 hours there with the people. But if I had more time, I would definitely spend more time with the people offline. That's for sure.
Anybody else? I mean, maybe a good way to phrase it too is like, what are the challenges of the in-person participation, but what are also those rewards that you see, and how do you balance those?
Well, I mean, yeah, what Stefan said was very true. I mean, like the in-person is basically much more personal, and you have like online, you always read some things and you get into a lot of arguments, and it's also, yeah, it's not that sustainable. I also think I remember at some point I thought, okay, I'm now in this online space, and if I stay in that space, I will lose it, and I will lose interest. I will skip Discord someday, and then it's over. And I thought, okay, either I'm going to try to get this to the next level, or it isn't sustainable for me. and you need the online to stay in touch, especially all over Europe with the Americans and so on, and to it's a useful place, and without the online we wouldn't have met each other anyways. So, but the in-person is very important, and we see that in these events. But you also feel that in the estuary meetups, and I think basically what Stefan said, like it's much more personal. You can relate to each other better. It's also like people start to meet personally. Some of you guys came to my baptism, to my birthday, and some of you travel together, go together to the monastery. I think that's just a different level than the online.
Well, last question before I open it up to you guys. Stefan, you were saying that it's really hard to kind of translate these things from English to German, but you guys often run these estuary meetings in your own language. How has that been for you in like processing all of these things that you usually speak in English for, but now it's grounded in your own like native tongues?
Yeah, I mean it is a challenge to do this all in English, and I could be much more nuanced in what I say when I would talk in German now, and I'm sometimes struggling to find the right words. And one reason why we also invited Thomas and Evolve magazine and want to get in conversation with them is because they are local. They are like us in the German language, and I think that's just very important. Also, if we talk about home and local, I think it's important to translate it to your context, and that doesn't only mean language. That also includes other aspects. But for me, it's very important to have our monthly meetings are always in German. If we don't have some guests from the US, sometimes we switch to English if we have guests, but mostly it's in German. So for me, it's very important. I don't know what you guys think.
I don't like it at all. No.
Why is that?
Because I can't talk with nuance in German. And he always makes me go first, so I just
Wait, you have
blutter
nuance?
something out, and then. No, I think there is something about the language that, in general, it's a translation process. That there isn't this online conversation necessarily going on in German, right? It's an English conversation, and Germans participate, others participate, but it's a very so it is a chance to work some of this stuff out in German, I think, but we don't see it on the online, right?
Well, the German language said what you see is a lot of text. And that's the thing with German. You can use so much language, so much text, so many phrasings, and mean 1,000 things or nothing. So language, I think, to me, I studied German language and literature. It's one of the most beautiful languages I could imagine. I love Goethe, as everyone knows by now. But to really be concise and pragmatic about what it is that I want to really convey to someone else, that can be the daunting task in the German language. And we see that in the German language chat, that sometimes someone writes something about Hayek or Schopenhauer, and it's like, wow.
Looks like
you have
Hayek
to. That's
Schopenhauer.
almost like doom scrolling. Yeah. And it's difficult to then say, okay, what is it that you were trying to say to me? Oh man, I meant that, and then it's another, 3 pages of doom scrolling.
Let me say one more point. I think, again, the conversation that we pay attention to is online in many ways, and it's very English dominated. And then the challenge is not only to translate it into German, but sometimes how do you invite people to that have no idea about Peterson or anything, and so there's another element to that it's this it's not only a weird conversation, but it's in English.
One thing that popped into my mind was like last year we did the festival in Landau, and it was in English, and you said before, this won't work in Germany. Like, what is your idea? An English-speaking conference in Germany, nobody will come, right? And I think you're right in a sense. We're not hundreds of people. We are a small circle of people with very special interests, and not everybody can follow the language or the concepts. But I think in future, I also want to do something like this also in German 1 year. Next year, maybe in English again. But yeah, I think for me that would be important to include more people here, more local people. Yeah, also German speakers. Yeah.
Do we have a missionary Auftrag? What's it called?
Mission.
A missionary mission.
It's not Matthew 28, it's Matthias 28, maybe.
I mean, because we have the problem. If we want, should we want more people, or should we have to have more people? We would have to think about how do we make all this stuff more accessible, which is probably the usual missionary problem that you have.
It's a good question. I don't know if we have an answer. Because that's, I'll just speak personally on the event side. There's something about having a small group of people, like this type of festival wouldn't work if there was 500 people, because it would feel overwhelming, the intimacy that comes here. And there's reason we don't sell more than 100 tickets. It's because we don't want it to be too big that it becomes impersonal and you feel like you can't meet with people. And we're at this space where that works. And if it scales too big, how does that work? And that's, I think, a question we're thinking about. And I think we're lucky enough that it isn't so big that we have to worry too deeply about that question. We still have time to let it flow and think about it. But the onboarding question, it's something that we keep pondering. And there's a bit of a fun in not having a specific answer, because it gives us a chance to let it grow how it's going to grow and not forcing it. But I know other people have more of that interest to move forward. But maybe we can open it up to other questions and see if Teddy, do you mind passing the mic?
Hi. Thanks, guys. Thanks for sharing your experiences. I was wondering, 2 questions from my side. First, have you guys experimented with estuary at someone's house? And if so, how has that gone? That's a brief question. And the other one was, what about estuary plus church? So how related is your estuary to a church? And is that, do you foresee that in the pipeline? And yeah, what implications do you see there? I'm considering myself. I'm asking because I'm considering that myself in a small, ICF International Church. It's near my house. Chatting with the pastor there, seems excited about the idea, but I'm also wondering whether that will be conducive to actually getting some salt water come into the river. So, just thoughts on that. Thanks.
Yeah, estuary in someone's private apartment. Did we do it? We haven't done it before, so I don't know. But I think it should work. Try it out.
No, go ahead.
And so as we said, we started in a restaurant, and then now we are in actually in Ludwigshafen, which is just divided by the Rhine from Mannheim. It's here in the local area. We are now once a month in a church building, and it's a Mennonite church, and it's none of us goes there on Sunday, so it's in a church building, but we are, let's say, we are not as involved in that church that there's some overlap, So I don't have an experience hosting an estuary in my own church. That might have some advantages and some disadvantages. Yeah, that's basically our situation. And as you said, I once, for example, I invited a neighbor of mine who is interested in spirituality and who read some Meister Eckhart and whatever. And I asked him once to come with us, and he was he was really suspicious about the fact that it's in a church building, and he was immediately he thought he has to defend himself because just of the building, just of the setting. So that's a danger, yeah. And you have to experiment with it. You can depends on who you want to invite as well.
So he meant in an association church, not literally at a church. For the recording.
I'll say something about meeting in a home. I think it would have a lot of benefits because it's more personal, it's more hospitable. I am a pastor of a house church, so one of the downsides of that is though it's hard to share that hosting role with other people. It's hard. You're not in a neutral space. You're at one person's space, and so then it doesn't quite belong to everybody in the same way. So I'd caution in some way doing that all the time, maybe changing it up. But if you meet somewhere neutral, then everybody has joint ownership of that time together. If one person, if it's at their home, they have a different role. Yeah. So could be both sides. As far as regard to working with a church, I think that's a good question. We have other people that have experience here too. I highly caution tying it too closely to a particular church or to a program in a church. I know ICF, and I know that they're often very good at what they do and promoting, and so but it would be almost probably the exercise of letting some go, that the estuary has its own life that is not associated with the church community. We always have a lot of us participate or active in churches, and we often use the phrase, we can't smuggle in Jesus. This is not some attempt to do something else. In fact, people who are not Christian have said, like coming and participating in that space because it's more open and they can be more honest in that space with Christians than they often can be with secular people in the other spaces. So there's something to protect in that, and I think I can understand why churches would be wanting to participate in it, but it is a specific space outside of church at the same time, and you'd have to navigate that. Yeah.
Hannes, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm thinking about when I was at a evangelical, was it a Freikirche?
Free church.
Brilliant translation. Okay. It's not Lutheran, so
It's not a non-state church, like a free
non-state church. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, hardly anyone was interested in any of the things that we do, because they usually have a Bible circle discussion meetings, and then 6 people meet and talk, and they have their Bible and their personal stuff, and they have a very estuarily kind of thing with that. They have the impulse from the Bible, well, that is their setting, and then they discuss and bring it into their personal lives. So I'm not sure that we have a lot to give if these things are satisfied already. So I don't really see for the church. It's more of a threat, I think, in that way, because the few people that come shouldn't, go then to someone else.
But we should add that the discussions we've had with Franz Vogelgesang, who's the head of the priest seminary in Speyer, he was very, very open to this concept, and he sees clearly the benefits that you can have when it's adjacent to church. To have people like that's the front room where you can, or on the front porch, people can sit there, and if they want to enter, they can enter, but they don't have to. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind, especially when trying to transport it to the German language sphere, that even though Christianity is receding in Germany as well, the infrastructure and logistics that are available to church in Germany are still massive. And that reduces a lot of complexity when trying to find the location, the people, the ways to distribute information. So I think there will be individual local solutions to that, but they should have some affinity, or not affiliation, but just affinity to churches in general, because state church and Catholic church are so widely distributed still over here, especially in the southern area.
Well, and just to answer the home question, I did not attend an estuary, but I attended a Jordan Peterson group that was similar to estuary when I was in Phoenix, and they ran it out of a home. And the person who home was at, he opened his house, and then they had a couple of leaders who were responsible for running the agenda of those meetings. So it took the person opening up the space and the responsibility of the people who were leading that meetup to make it work. It worked really well. It got difficult when it started getting really big, because all of a sudden you couldn't fit everybody in the living room. But it can work. It needs leadership to help keep it going, and people need to know what their responsibility is if they're going to take that leadership. Do we have any other questions? Tim?
I have a question for all of you. Can you tell me your name again?
Hannes.
Hannes. I really connected to what you were saying in the beginning about how you experienced it as very difficult to be monologue about the 4 Ps from Viveki when you like try to make who's not familiar with those concepts. I've had that same experience in like literature classes, having like all these ideas that colonize me, trying to apply that to literature, realizing that I've been like talking for like over 5 minutes trying to explain the 4 Ps in order to get to the next point. Everyone just staring at me like, what are you talking about? Do you feel that the estuary and make you more fluent in then like talking about these things with other people, or is it like, does it to have these these conversations? Maybe this is better. Yeah. Does it stay within the estuary and is like fulfilling to have these conversations, or are you able to bring it to the outside as well?
Let's switch mics here. Cool question. I don't know. Maybe 50-50. I think, well, I'm a teacher by trade, and I usually try to bring complex things back into small words for small brains, because in reality my brain also needs small things to work. That helps. So in teaching, it's a very useful concept. You only understand something if you were able to translate it into your own words in general. And what we do is we bring this high-level concept stuff, and if we now say one of the magic words that we invented and everyone knows this stuff, we still at least have to try to bring it back into reality, and those are simple words. With the experience of bringing that back into reality, at least that helps, yes. And then it's easier. It's not easy. It's easier to sometimes bring parts of concepts to some people who are open to it. Yes.
I also think we get a bit more fluent over time, but it will still, I think, need some years to even get better. And I think it's a very slow process, but I think you get more fluent in it. Yeah.
I think what would help actually is really doing this festival concept in German, because then we have a judge. And then we really have first-time evaluation possible for, does that in any sense translate to the German sphere? Does it translate in the language and also in the culture? that we live in here. And before that, I think it's a hypothesis that it could work out, but yeah, I think we have to put that into practice.
I think it should. We're talking the most basic existential problems here, what it means to be a human on Earth. I think Germans should get that.
Dave, do you think we're getting more fluent?
Yes, yes. No, and I always know it's so interesting to watch you guys put that stuff into words. So it's happening. I think probably the online space has not yet really. You in the estuary, yeah. It's I think bringing it down into life, grounding it. That's happening, but we haven't seen like people pick it up in let's say there's not German YouTubers yet that quite do this these discussions. Yeah.
Renee first, and then Teddy, and then we'll wrap up and give you a break before our final panel.
Cheers. Stefan, are you aware through your Goethe studies whether there has been some sort of analog or some sort of precedent that's similar to what we're living through right now in this period that you've been dealing with? As in, so they have all these ideas popping up suddenly. People have been working on them, of course, for several decades mostly, but still rising to popularity in a very short time. And then people are just kind of baffled at what are we going to do about this, and how this then may have been translated well or maybe not so well in the culture like a couple decades after. Are you aware of any of that?
I mean, when you look at Goethe, he was always involved in circles that were kind of elitist, right? So he was brought up in a hugely wealthy family. His father educated him in the best possible way. He studied, and he then became the privy councillor of a duke, and had like lifetime payment for that. So that's extremely privileged and really difficult to compare. But when you look at the culture back then, you always had those small circles dealing with certain issues, and they met at their homes, and they had like kind of relationships with each other and tried to discuss those things. And so that is a kind of framing that occurs every time and again, that people interested in ideas have to create relationships that maybe enable them to put something into practice. So it begins with ideas, it goes through relationships, and it ends in practice. And it's not sure how that's going to play out. So basically, it's a process that you have to go through without knowing whether that will lead to the telos or not. I hope that answers the question.
It does, but if we have the time and you are able to come up with something spontaneously, do you have an example of this for one specific topic? One cultural phenomenon, let's say, that kind of emerged.
I would be at a loss, and probably I would inappropriately answer. So
sorry,
I would probably inappropriately answer that question. So maybe I have to skip that answer.
All right, okay, that's fine.
Isn't the Frankfurt School in Marxism a great example? No, really. I mean, few people, heavy impact on the world.
Yeah, when it comes to impact, you look at the Jena set and German Romanticism. We're still, swimming in all the repercussions that created for not just German society, but all of Western culture. This emotional individualism that surrounds that. That was the Jena set. And that was Goethe at the head of it. He was already in his 40s, but he had Fichte and Hegel and Schelling and Schlegel, and all those figures were in that group. And they lived together, house to house, next to each other. And they had relationships. They literally had the same women. It's like they had three-way relationships. And that you have to read Andrea Wolf's Magnificent Rebels to see that. That's really, really interesting how that played out in Jena back then. So you see kind of reverberations that we have today back then already.
how did those ideas inside of one house explode into the rest of the world? I don't know. But they didn't even have the internet.
All right, Teddy, do you want to do one, and then we'll wrap up here?
Yes, I have the question for those who are not represented here, but are part of the German community. So, how is it was informed me that the German community dividing in two: those who are close together and can maybe share wives with one another, and those who and those who live in the remote places. So you have a big country and and everybody is scattered around, and they cannot participate in the SGR that is here. So for them, and I noticed that a lot of people come to Elsnet and to the community because they live so far away. Like this old woman near Sweden in a small island, and she wants to have conversation about Jung, and she have nobody to talk to, right? And her English is not that good, and I hear the call, and I ask myself, how should we include them if they cannot come to our SGRE? How the internet space, the whatever it be, if it's British meaning or other place, will facilitate a place for those people. So please.
The question goes to people not on the stage, right?
No,
people on the stage.
No, he's asking the question for the people who can't be here because they're too far. So how do you bring in those people that are too far away to be at these in-person events?
Thank you, Cassidy.
So I think you have to look at it in several steps. The first step is getting into contact with the possibility of having such discussions in the first place, and that the internet is necessary for that, even in Germany. So we have to find ways to really make our message known through internet mediums in Germany, and then the next step is, continuing the work that we do on the German language chat, and from that, I think in the long run there should flow something in real life in meet space. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to be sustainable. And we've had the privilege that it's possible in this area because there's so many people here. We know people from other places in Germany that were in Landau last year but can't participate this year. And we're still very, very small. It's not like we know 30 or 40 or 50 Germans participating in all of this. And that is because I think we still haven't crossed that first threshold of having people know that we exist. Yeah. Once we have that and people know that we exist, we can start thinking about, how do we do that online? How do we transport that into real life? And what do you think right now?
Teddy, remember last year, the festival, I think what you did was extremely, extremely helpful in preparation for the festival. Like you opened this channel and you contacted everybody knew of who bought a ticket and will be in Landau. You started a conversation with them and you recorded it and everybody could see it. And that was just such a powerful way to build the community before this event. And I mean, that's what Paul did for all of us. He opened his YouTube channel and he was there for, like, what can we do for the people who are remotely distributed? Be there for them online. And that can take different forms. Be there for them, be open to them, listen to them. And I mean, it like, not everybody can do everything. Like, some people can host these events, but they cannot during the night also be there for the people online. Like, we have to work together to be there for all different community people.
So classically, it's like think globally, act locally. I'm thinking about getting in contact with church leaders in my hometown. There are these Arbeitskreise where like Catholic and Protestant, all the denominations sit together. So there's a possibility to get to talk to them and maybe introduce the estuary concept to them and then say, can we make something out of this? And see where that goes. And this ties back to what I said earlier. I think for me, at least in my region, it's necessary to tie back to these church institutions to actually, distribute that knowledge about estuary in the first place. It doesn't have to stay there, but I think that's the way to move forward, at least in my area.
So we do have a missionary mission.
I think it's hard because there are a lot of people with a lot of different perspectives and a lot of opinions and ideas of what this should be and what this is. And the truth is we don't fully know. We're just participating and letting it come up. And so we all have different roles to play in this. Some people are going to attend festivals. Some people are going to put them on. And some people who are going to travel from Hungary and Israel to come here, and some people who have to stay home even though it's in their backyard. We have to kind of put a trust in the fact that we're making these connections, and if we keep doing the work of tending the garden of whatever this is, what is meant to be will grow, and we just have to prepare ourselves and do what we can for whatever harvest comes, because it's not promised or guaranteed. And estuary might stop tomorrow, but even if that does stop, I think good things have come from it, from all of these relationships we have, and I think that's more important. And me and my husband talk about it all the time. It's not about making bridges of meaning last forever or the estuary movement last forever. It's taking that spirit that we learned from this and bringing it into whatever community we have. And that's harder work than making something last or gain a lot of popularity and notice. So unless anybody else has a comment, I think we'll close there. Thank you so much for your questions and listening, and we'll move into our final session here in the next 10 minutes.